Prince's last Diddy recording played in trial. Prince was going to expose him.
Let's talk about what actually went down in that courtroom when Prince's voice filled the room. Nothing screams, "I'm totally innocent," like watching a music mogul's face crumble faster than his empire. Diddy, the man who spent decades cultivating his can't touch this image, just had his carefully curated mask ripped off by a ghost. That's right, a dead man just delivered the receipts that the living were too terrified to bring. You don't need to be a Hollywood insider to see the desperation plastered across Diddy's face the moment Prince's voice echoed through that courtroom.
Cassie said he would get physical. That one male guy who did things with Diddy and Cassie said he witnessed him get physical. Don, so again, we talked about how the domestic charges aren't, what he's being, what he's on trial for. But boy, it's stacking up. And I feel that the jury is going to take that into consideration.
Day 3 of this orchestrated legal train wreck just revealed the evidence nobody saw coming. And guess what? The so-called untouchable bad boy kingpin is spiraling. The day started just like the others. Journalists thirsty for drama, celebrities slinking in through side doors like they're auditioning for a spy movie, and Diddy strutting in with his fake confidence like he was walking into one of his own parties. The courtroom wasn't just full. It was electric with anticipation. Security guards doubled their numbers. Doubled. Who's buying that this was just standard procedure? Please. Diddy waltzed in wearing his $1,000,000 smile and perfectly tailored navy suit. Classic rich person cosplay of innocence. His legal shield of 2,500 an hour attorneys surrounded him like he was royalty. He actually looked like a man who thought he was still in control. Can you believe the delusion? What he didn't notice was the unusual activity at the prosecution table. They were setting up equipment that hadn't been there before, testing connections with the kind of anticipation that screams, "We've got something that will end you." The judge entered with his usual fake solemnity and had the audacity to remind everyone to maintain composure, regardless of what evidence was presented. Talk about foreshadowing a meltdown wrapped in a designer suit. The prosecution's approach was brilliant, if you appreciate psychological warfare. They spent 2 days boring everyone to tears with methodical evidence, lulling Diddy into thinking this was just another rich guy getting away with it. Then boom. The lead prosecutor dropped the bomb. Your Honor, at this time the prosecution would like to present critical audio evidence recently authenticated by our forensic team. The defense immediately objected. Of course they did. Nothing says we're terrified, like attorneys frantically waving their arms during a sidebar. But guess what? The judge wasn't buying what Diddy's legal dream team was selling. The evidence was properly disclosed in discovery. Sorry, not sorry. Diddy, and that's when it happened. The moment that sent Diddy's world crashing down faster than his upcoming record sales. What you are about to hear is the final private recording made by Prince Rogers Nelson before his death. The room froze. Journalists stopped typing. Everyone collectively gasped like they were watching the season finale of a reality show. Prince, the Prince. The musical genius who had more talent in his pinky finger than Diddy has in his entire choreographed career was about to speak from beyond the grave. The color drained from Diddy's face so quickly you could practically hear it happening. His legal team huddled closer like penguins in a snowstorm, frantically whispering as the prosecution connected their device to the courtroom audio system. In that moment before a single note played, the power in the room shifted. Diddy's legal team knew something devastating was coming. And judging by the sudden panic in Diddy's eyes, so did he.
I'm just trying to listen. I mean, there's a lot of this stuff that I've heard and seen already. I'm really trying to connect the dots here and think like, damn, what if Prince was letting Diddy, like, what if he caught wind of some, I'll just say allegedly, stuff that Diddy might have been doing that seems to be, like, I ain't talking about consensual things, I'm talking about illegal things or whatever. But I'm just like, would Diddy be that dumb to, like, not think that Prince, this celebrity, has cameras in his house as well. So I'm just trying to think, like, because if Prince has cameras and he's recording stuff, you know, to get some dirt on Diddy, I don't know. I feel like Diddy, with all his cameras that he allegedly had, or no, they actually found cameras.
Really health conscious. He was a vegan. He didn't abuse alcohol.
Very strange.
I didn't know of him abusing drugs. He worked out, you know, so, you know, that also really concerned me, because it made me think that, wow, so you mean you do all these things to take...
The prosecutor explained the recording was made just weeks before Prince's death in 2016. This was never meant to be heard publicly, she said. Prince created this as insurance, documenting what he witnessed firsthand. When Prince's voice first played through the speakers, a woman in the third row actually covered her mouth and cried. It wasn't just the shock of hearing him. It was his tone. Prince sounded worried. Not the confident Purple Rain superstar we all knew. This was Prince raw, unfiltered, and clearly frightened. "I'm making this recording because I don't know who to trust anymore," Prince began. The quality was crystal clear. You could hear him taking deep breaths between sentences. This wasn't a performance. This was real. What happened next was better than any Netflix documentary. Prince started naming names, specific dates, locations, and at the center of it all was Diddy. Prince described parties at Diddy's homes in the Hamptons in Miami, the exact same parties that 3 previous witnesses had already testified about. Talk about corroboration from the grave. I watched Diddy's face as the recording played. Within seconds, his confident expression collapsed faster than his alibis. His eyes widened. His lawyer tried whispering something to him, but Diddy just stared straight ahead, completely frozen like he was seeing his own funeral. Prince's voice grew more urgent as the recording continued. "What happens at these parties isn't just wrong. It's criminal," he said. "I've seen how they operate. I've seen who's involved. I've seen who gets hurt." Each word seemed to hit Diddy like a physical blow. The power of this recording can't be overstated. Prince wasn't just confirming what prosecutors claimed, he was providing insider verification that nobody could challenge. You can't cross-examine? A dead man. You can't intimidate him into changing his story. Prince meticulously described a specific party in December 2015. He named guests who were there, including 2 celebrities who had previously denied ever attending Diddy's private gatherings. Oops, caught in a lie by a ghost. Prince mentioned seeing the usual setup in the private rooms upstairs, describing details that matched exactly what the prosecution had outlined in their opening statements. "I tried talking to him about it," Prince said on the recording. "I told him this had to stop. He just laughed and said I should mind my own business if I wanted to keep working in this industry." At that exact moment, the prosecutor paused the recording. The timing was perfect, almost theatrical. Every single person in that courtroom turned to look at Diddy. His composed facade had completely crumbled. His face was ashen. His hands, which had been perfectly still on the table throughout the trial, were now visibly shaking like he was freezing in a heat wave. His lead attorney placed a yellow legal pad in front of him, presumably to block the jury's view of his reaction. But it was too late, everyone had seen it. The moment Prince's voice identified him, Diddy's carefully constructed wall of confidence collapsed completely.
Ever since my 3rd album, I wasn't really taking large advances from the recording companies. I was recording the albums myself in my own studio. So the way I looked at it, I owned the work because I paid for it. And I did all the work. I created it, so I felt like it should belong to me. That said, the companies felt otherwise. And they would always hold this contract up and say, "Well, you signed it." And I say, "Well, I understand that. It's not like I want to leave. I just want to, talk about this thing and see if we can't make it more fair."
That Cassie was into the freak-offs herself and was like a willing participant and was into all the freaky stuff, and essentially that was the crux of what they were trying to do yesterday.
And do you think they proved that or not?
I mean, there's texts like that from 2009. I'm always ready to freak off. There was some other texts where she was referencing like hitting him up about the FOs, as what they were referring to him. To me, like, yes, this doesn't look good, but at the same time, I think the timeline is crucial here. And these are texts from 2009, man. That was when they were first getting in the relationship. She was young. Obviously, they were in the honeymoon stage, and she was stoked to like, oh my God, I'm with Diddy. I'm living this lavish lifestyle. Of course, she's going to be saying things that she knows will curry favor with him to keep it going.
What truly stunned everyone wasn't just Prince's words. It was watching Diddy completely fall apart right before our eyes. For 2 solid days, he'd been the picture of control. When accusers pointed fingers directly at him, he remained stone-faced. When damaging photos appeared on screen, he whispered calmly to his attorneys. Not once did he show a crack in his carefully crafted image. But Prince's voice changed everything. As the recording continued after that brief pause, Diddy's transformation was shocking. His attorney, the same high-powered lawyer who's defended countless celebrities, placed a hand on Diddy's forearm, a standard move to keep clients calm. Diddy jerked his arm away so violently that water spilled from a glass on the defense table. Several jurors visibly reacted, exchanging glances with each other. The man who built an empire on his cool, collected persona was unraveling in real time. Then it happened. Diddy completely lost control. "That's a lie," he shouted, his voice echoing through the stunned courtroom. "He wasn't even there. That never happened." The judge immediately banged his gavel. "Order! Order in this court." He fixed Diddy with a stern glare. "Mr. Combs, control yourself or I will hold you in contempt." The courtroom fell silent except for Prince's voice still playing through the speakers. The prosecution's strategy became blindingly obvious in that moment. They had deliberately saved this recording, holding it back until Diddy had settled into a false sense of security. They waited until day 3, when his guard might be lower, to play the one piece of evidence that would crack his carefully constructed facade. And it worked perfectly.
Texts don't look good because it does make it look like she was into the freak-offs and all the freaky stuff. The other things that the Diddy's team tried to do was show how they had breaks, and she like was with Michael B. Jordan and was with Kid Cudi for a minute. But during that time period, she was still having freak-offs with Diddy, and I think that was them trying to show, like, this wasn't a controlling thing. Here she was, like, hooking up with other people. She just was into the freak-offs.
I kind of buy that, to be honest.
So...
like, she is out of the freak-off scene. She is... when she's with Kid Cudi, or you know, allegedly with Michael B. Jordan, she's kind of out of the freak-offs if she wants to be. So why do you keep going back? I know it's kind of like a mental, like, she still loves Diddy. And there's some sort of, you know, pull he has over her. But I think that was kind of interesting testimony that she kind of had a new boyfriend if she wanted. Yeah. She kept going back to the freak.
Yeah, and then the other bombshell was just like them trying to just really hammer home that like, hey, these people are out of their mind. And essentially it was revealed that Diddy actually overdosed on painkillers in 2012.
Like, drove him to hospital.
Like, that's how bad use was, that like he overdosed. So yeah, they're basically just trying to muck it all up to make it essentially look like she was into all this freaky stuff and only...
After the judge restored order, the prosecution resumed playing Prince's recording. What came next shocked everyone in that courtroom. Prince hadn't just made vague accusations. He had detailed 3 specific allegations that cut straight to the heart of the case against Diddy. Prince revealed he'd been secretly documenting concerning behavior in the music industry for years. "I keep everything," his voice explained. "Dates, times, who was there, what happened. I've been doing this since 2007. Legal experts in the room exchanged glances. This wasn't just random observations. This was systematic documentation from one of music's most meticulous minds. Who needs security cameras when you have Prince taking notes? The courtroom was completely silent as Prince continued, expressing deep concern about how young artists were being manipulated at these industry gatherings. They come in thinking this is their big break, Prince said. By the time they realize what's really happening, they're already trapped. I've seen it happen to at least 7 artists directly. The second allegation focused on a direct confrontation between Prince and Diddy. I approached him at the Grammy after party in 2016, Prince stated. I told him I knew what was happening and it needed to stop. He laughed in my face and said, "You might be Prince, but you're not untouchable." I took that as a threat. Diddy's attorneys frantically scribbled notes as this played, clearly blindsided by this revelation. Nothing says we're winning this case like lawyers scribbling panic notes. Perhaps most damaging was Prince detailing financial transactions between Diddy and several individuals who were allegedly paid for their silence. Prince mentioned specific amounts, $2 million to one person, $1.3 million to another. That perfectly matched financial records the prosecution had presented earlier in the trial. "I've seen the payments," Prince stated. "I've seen the NDAs they signed. This isn't just rich people behaving badly. It's systematic and calculated." As the recording continued, Prince's voice grew more somber. "I'm making this recording because I'm afraid to speak out publicly. The power structure in this industry protects people like him. Nobody wants to believe what happens behind closed doors." The recording ended with words that sent chills through the courtroom. "If anything happens to me, make sure this gets to the right people. This isn't just about protecting myself. It's about protecting everyone who hasn't been able to speak up." When Prince's voice finally fell silent, the courtroom remained completely still. Nobody moved. Nobody whispered. The prosecution had just accomplished something extraordinary. They had turned Prince into their star witness from beyond the grave. The lead prosecutor simply stood and said, "No further questions, Your Honor." She didn't need to say anything else. Prince had done what no living witness could do: speak without fear of consequences, revealing secrets that had been buried for years.
You know, they have their notebooks in their hand. They're coming in, they're very alert, and I think this is one of those testimonies where you have no choice but to pay attention and almost be flabbergasted, obviously, at some of what you're hearing, because it's not only just insight into life, but the details are disturbing at times, especially during that prosecution testimony when we saw some of the alleged abuse, or we saw pictures of her after a beating of some kind, according to her. But the jurors are definitely paying attention. I don't see anyone that's not keeping their focus on Cassie Ventura, and also I noticed them taking notes a lot of times.
And the children, as they were exiting court yesterday, 2 of the girls were seen crying. How emotional have they been in court?
Again, I cannot imagine if that was my father or somebody close to me up there and having life. Those are young women. They lost their mother, one of them, the twins. So no one can probably quite understand what it is that they're going through, but I think that's something that you think about on both sides, you know, to look at Alex Fine, which is Cassie Ventura's husband, and think about him having to listen to all that's being said about the type of woman that Cassie Ventura was versus the person that's expecting, you know, their 3rd child together now. So whether it's Combs's family or Ventura's family that's there to support her, her brother and her husband, Alex Fine, I think it's difficult on both sides.
I'm hearing at one point in time, you have acknowledged this as well, that as Diddy was listening to the cross-examination, he was nodding his...
I know, can't avoid it. And we see this throughout the trial, people running by or rolling by, if you will, with music playing. I've heard the Me and You song by Cassie Ventura, which kind of made her famous. And we just heard one of Diddy's songs as we're doing this interview.
Right. You had previously said that Diddy was nodding in agreement to some of the text messages that Cassie was reading out loud. I've also heard that Diddy was taking notes.
Oh, yes.
As well?
Oh, yeah.
At what point was he taking notes?
I've seen him taking notes from the beginning. I see him put his glasses on. He gets very close to the screen when they're reading some of those text messages. So he's paying attention.
In 7 seconds, Diddy's outburst transformed the entire trial. The moment Prince's recording stopped playing, his legal team jumped into crisis mode. His lead attorney stood up immediately, his voice almost shaking as he addressed the judge. "Your Honor, we request a 15-minute recess to consult with our client." The desperation was obvious to everyone watching. The judge didn't even hesitate. "Request denied. The court will continue with the presentation of evidence." He shot a stern look directly at Diddy. "I expect no further disruptions." Diddy's attorneys looked shocked. They weren't used to being denied. These were lawyers who charge $1,500 an hour and typically get whatever they ask for in court. But today, Nothing was going their way. Meanwhile, the prosecution team couldn't hide their satisfaction. The lead prosecutor maintained a professional expression, but her second chair actually smiled slightly when Diddy shouted. They exchanged a quick glance that said everything. Their trap had worked perfectly. They had planned for this reaction, wanted it, and now they had it on official court record. A legal analyst sitting 2 rows behind me whispered to his colleague, "This is catastrophic for the defense. They've spent 2 days portraying him as calm and innocent. That image just shattered in front of the jury." The judge addressed the jury directly. "The outburst you just witnessed should be disregarded in your deliberations. Emotional reactions are not evidence." But every trial attorney knows that once jurors see something, they can't unsee it. 3 jurors were staring directly at Diddy, studying his every move after the outburst. Court security didn't take any chances after Diddy's explosion. 2 additional officers positioned themselves just feet from the defense table. One officer stood directly behind Diddy's chair, close enough to reach him in seconds if needed. Because nothing says "I'm totally innocent" like needing extra security. To make sure you don't lose it again. The rest of the day was brutal for Diddy. The prosecution continued presenting evidence that connected directly to Prince's recording. They showed financial records matching the exact payments Prince had mentioned. They displayed text messages from witnesses describing the same events Prince had detailed. Diddy sat there sweating through his designer suit. His hands trembled so visibly that his attorney passed him a legal pad, presumably to give him something to hold. He declined water when an assistant offered it. By mid-afternoon, he looked physically ill. His facial expression had transformed from confident to cornered. The final blow came just before the court adjourned for the day. Diddy's legal team filed an emergency motion to exclude Prince's recording from evidence, claiming it was potentially manipulated and impossible to authenticate given the witness is deceased. Legal experts in the room immediately recognized this for what it was, a desperate attempt to undo what couldn't be undone. The timing of this motion revealed how truly panicked his defense team had become. Emergency motions are typically filed only when attorneys have no other options left. As everyone filed out of the courtroom, legal analysts were already making bold predictions. "This will be the moment people point to when discussing how the case was lost," one prominent TV legal expert told his producer. In a single day, Diddy went from looking like a man fighting false accusations to someone who lost control when confronted with the truth. A veteran court reporter summed it up perfectly. "I've covered hundreds of celebrity trials, and I've never seen someone's case collapse so completely in a single moment." Playing that Prince recording on day 3 wasn't just lucky timing. It was all part of a masterful strategy the prosecution had been planning for months. Court insiders revealed the prosecution team had this bombshell ready from the beginning, but deliberately held it back until Diddy started feeling comfortable in the courtroom. They wanted him relaxed before they dropped it. A source close to the prosecution team told me the first 2 days were about lulling him into a false sense of security. This explains why the prosecution's case seemed somewhat routine during the opening days. They weren't showing their full hand yet. The team spent nearly 4 months authenticating Prince's recording. They brought in 3 separate audio forensic experts to verify it hadn't been altered or manipulated in any way. They knew the defense would immediately challenge its authenticity, so they built an ironclad verification process that would stand up to any scrutiny. What's particularly calculated is how they studied Diddy's previous courtroom behavior. The prosecution team analyzed footage from his past legal appearances and noticed a pattern. Diddy typically maintained perfect control during the first 48 hours of proceedings, but became noticeably less guarded as trials progressed. They literally timed their bombshell to the precise psychological moment when he would be most vulnerable. The prosecution built their case like architects. They started with the foundation, establishing witnesses who could verify locations, dates, and basic facts. Then they added structural elements, financial records, and text messages. All of this was carefully designed so that when Prince's voice finally played, every detail he mentioned would connect to evidence the jury had already seen and accepted. Their presentation wasn't improvised either. A courthouse employee revealed the prosecution team actually rehearsed how they would play the recording multiple times. They practiced the exact moment to pause it, precisely when to look at Diddy. and even rehearsed their poker faces when his inevitable reaction came. What makes this strategy so devastating is how they've established Prince as the perfect witness. He can't be intimidated. He can't be cross-examined. His motives can't be questioned. Prince speaks from beyond with a credibility that no living witness could match. The prosecution's masterstroke was timing this revelation for day 3, when media attention in high-profile cases traditionally begins to wane. Cable news typically covers opening statements intensely, then reduces coverage until closing arguments. By dropping their biggest bomb on day 3, they guaranteed renewed media frenzy exactly when public interest might have started fading. This wasn't just about convincing the jury, a veteran legal analyst explained. It was about controlling the public narrative too. They just ensured this case will dominate headlines again. As court adjourned, the difference between the two legal teams couldn't have been more stark. The prosecution gathered their materials calmly, occasionally sharing satisfied glances. Meanwhile, Diddy's team huddled in obvious distress, some making urgent phone calls while others frantically flipped through legal texts. The power balance had shifted completely in the span of minutes. One moment, Diddy was a powerful music mogul fighting allegations. The next, he was a desperate man watching his carefully constructed image crumble under the weight of testimony from a music legend who could speak freely from beyond the grave. As the third day of trial ended, something profound had changed in that courtroom. Prince's voice, clear, specific, and impossible to silence, had done what years of allegations couldn't. It cracked Diddy's carefully maintained facade in front of everyone. The trial resumes tomorrow, but everyone knows nothing will be the same. The ghost of a music legend just delivered the most powerful testimony possible, catching Diddy completely off guard. What's keeping industry insiders up tonight isn't just Diddy's fate. It's what else might be hiding in Prince's private vault. Who else did he name? What other recordings exist that we haven't heard?